was I had a vision of putting a copy of my story into every prison cell in the country. Coming down, no presents, under the tree, my mother breaking her heart, crying, and we as kids just wrapped our arms around her and said, "Mom, look, it's okay, we understand." My dad always used to say to me, "Don't get involved in those two things. Religion or politics, stay well clear." And what did I do? I didn't listen to him. I got involved in both.
I don't mean to sound rude, but you won't take offense. You started off as a criminal. You was arrested dozens of times, locked up, and then at some point you saw the light. You reformed yourself, and you wrote a book about it, and the book was called "To Catch a Thief." Give me a few minutes on your life then and what led to you writing that book.
Right. So I grew up in a very poor family, working class family in Llanelli, with 3 younger brothers. We were surrounded by crime and drugs. It was the street that we lived in. It was the area. Inevitably, we got involved in the same kind of thing. By the age of 13, I started smoking cannabis, but it wasn't weed like the kids smoke today. It was like the resin. Then I went to harder drugs. So I was a drug addict. Then to feed that drug addiction, I did crime, all kinds of different criminal activity, which I'm not proud of. Served my time, but my life was a complete and utter mess. And it was through the work of a Christian rehabilitation center that helped me find my way back, if you like, that sort of navigation your way through life. And I was in Swansea prison in 1993, the last time I was in prison. And the vicar of the chapel that used to come into the church, Ted Hunt, no longer with us, but he came into my cell and he would talk to me every single day about faith and about there's another path you can take, Rich. You don't need to go down this road, because if you continue, you're either going to end up dead or spend the rest of your life in jail. And I started to explore, started to internalize, ask questions about faith. Is there a God, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure many, many people sometimes go through moments in their lives, Nick, where they question it as well. A lot of people do it when they go through hard times, mainly, please God, get me out of this. If you do, I'll do anything for you. We won't play that, I'm sure. And I just found myself walking a completely different path, alien to how I grew up. And the reason for writing the book was I had a vision of putting a copy of my story into every prison cell in the country. And we had 70,000 copies delivered to prisons across the UK, into every prison cell. And it was supported by Prison Fellowship. And I think the Gideons were involved as well at the time. And we accomplished that. We raised the finance to do that, to pay for the books. And we got them into all the prisons. And on the back of the book, it had a contact details where they could contact me personally. And then I would link them with rehabilitation centers so that they could get the help that I once received that got me on the right path. So it was a kind of way of trying to say to people, look, don't give up hope that you can change. I know society might tell you can't. A leopard never changes its spots, but I believe in the power of change. And I believe that people can change if they're given the help, the support, and the framework. And I was given that. And so it was really around that. That's why I wrote the book, which then became a TV series on crime, To Catch a Thief, on Channel 5. And it just went from there, really. And my journey went into like kind of television before politics. Did 2 shows. Yeah, I was on the one show a couple of times on crime prevention, because of course I've been the other side. I've been the criminal. So, the workings of a criminal's mind, they want to get into to see how he does things and how he operates for people to understand. And so, yeah, that was an interesting part of the journey as well. I learned a lot of things, but that's how the book really came about. He was telling my story of pain, rejection, my childhood, didn't have a family. I mean, I remember waking up Christmases, Nick, when we go downstairs, I'd see my mother. My father had left the family home when I was about 10 years of age. I was 10 years of age. Coming down, no presents, under the tree, my mother breaking her heart, crying, and we as kids just wrapped our arms around her and said, "Mom, look, it's okay, we understand." I'm getting emotional even telling you, they were emotional times. And one Christmas, we had a tin of Irish stew for Christmas dinner. That's all we had, and those things kind of stick in your mind, and they humble you. They make you realize, and to see my man broke, and then my mother had a nervous breakdown. We all ended up in care. And I don't blame her for that. We were terrible kids, me and my 3 younger brothers. We were up to all sorts, as you can imagine, bringing police back and forth to the house all the time. So I was sent off to foster care, didn't see my brothers for years and years and years. And there I am in prison, Swansea prison on remand. My cell door opens and in walks my second brother, Andrew, who I hadn't seen since I was 10. And I was like, wow, Andrew, because we were split up, sent to different parts of the country in Wales. And so, yeah, and so it's been an interesting journey. I had no interest in politics or religion. My dad always used to say to me, don't get involved in those two things. Religion or politics, stay well clear. And what did I do? I didn't listen to him. I got involved in both.
So that is a unique story. Lots of people can, understand that. I was never arrested and end up in jail, but I came from, the same streets as you, but just based in Manchester, single parent household, no money. And I probably was on the edges of criminality sometimes and just never got caught and never went down that path. But living that life gives you a different perspective on life. And my career started when I worked at Manchester Council, stopping kids like me and you going down the wrong path. And the reason why I was successful at that and won many awards at that work is because I was one of those kids and I didn't take the BS off them. So when they were telling me it wasn't their fault, the police are picking on them, it's not my fault that cannabis is illegal, it's not my fault because my mum's a drug addict, it's not my fault. And I was always going, it's always your fault because you make those choices. Life's hard. Life's always been hard and life's always going to be hard. And the more you try to make excuses for your own behavior, the more you're going to fail. And I helped turn around many, many kids by having those frank conversations and cutting through the excuses and the BS. And I only could do that because I came from those same streets and understood their families, understood the choices they were making because I was doing it myself at some point in my life.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. When you've been there, you understand people more. And I think what I found is when I started to look at politics and how the country is run and things like that, how out of touch they are with the everyday person on the street. And that's what gave me the passion to say, you know what? Our voices need to be heard. Working class people who've been through some stuff and survived. Because I've nearly died a few times as well, with overdoses and things like that. So I've been at the bottom of the pit, right? And I've survived. I'm not blaming politicians for that. That's the societal aspect of my life. That's how I grew up. And there's a lot of poor working class communities around our countries in the north. Here in Wales, one of the most deprived areas, of course, in the country. And ghettos in London, as I call them, because that's what they turned into, Birmingham and places like that. There are places. The poverty is so, so bad. It's like we're stepping back in time. And I kind of got frustrated and angry. And I thought, well, rather than just, chunter from the sidelines, do something, Rich. And it was around about the time when Brexit was on. It was on the table. The vote, 17.5 million people voted to leave. I stood as an MP then with Nigel Farage, formerly, obviously, Reform, formerly Brexit Party, in Blaen I Gwent, which I was living at the time. We weren't successful, but to my credit and to my team's credit, I should say, I shouldn't take credit, we finished the third highest in the country in the Brexit Party of the share of votes, and first in Wales, of course. So we didn't run. The campaign was good, but it was not good enough. If the Conservatives hadn't run against me, we possibly could have won because I beat the Conservatives, the Lib Dems, the Greens. It was just Labour. Put a red rosette on a donkey and they'll just vote for it. But I think things have shifted now since they've become freeform, and I think that there's a surge now of people thinking, you know what, I've got no other alternative but to look at reform. At least look at them, because the other parties are two cheeks of the same ass, as they say, and it's just offering nothing to anybody. So I met Nigel a couple of times. He campaigned. He came on my campaigns, knocked doors with me. Came to Ebervale Rugby Club for a couple of pints as he likes, and get a couple of cheers and a couple of boos there. So they didn't all love him. And then obviously the TV thing unfolded. I got invited to GB News when they first started out. I was even in discussion about having my own show with them at the time. That was early on. I met with Angelos, I think his name was. We discussed having like kind of a Welsh kind of element because it was very London centric, I thought. It didn't really, speak to people outside of London. Yes, they had reporters outside of London, but that's kind of stopped now, by and by. They've become part of the same legacy media, in my opinion. I've got friends that work there, so forgive me if I'm having a go at you. I'm not. But suffice to say, I do think that they've become an entity that's part of the legacy media that that I didn't expect them to go down that road. I want them to remain kind of, not right wing, because by the way, I am considered to be an extreme right wing thug apparently because of the things I say and everything else. But I just see them changing to something else, and it's a real shame, really, because what started so good ended so badly. And I think of people that cancel, like we mentioned, it was Dan Wootton, Calvin Robinson, whatever your viewers take on those, Lawrence Fox, whatever your viewers' thoughts are. These people were cancelled. And there's Ofcom as well. We had all that kind of stuff going on, and so I kind of was passionate about getting the message out there. But all the people I was hearing were people not like yourself, Nick, who come from university, from wealthy backgrounds, who had some political nuance about them. They'd been educated, had a degree in politics. And I was just a Welshman from Wales, with a bit of passion in his belly, a bit of hoil, as we call it in Wales. And I thought, I'm going to try and speak up on behalf of working class people who are on the streets. The homelessness crisis here in Wales, for example, is massive. And there's so much that could be done that doesn't get done because governments, our government in particular, are more concerned with what's happening outside of our country rather than what's happening inside of our country. And we're not taking care of our own. We're not taking care of our own people. We're putting others before our own citizens. And, and to me, that's an injustice. And when I see that, I want to call it out because it's wrong. So that's the route then into politics. That's why I got into that kind of thing. It was, and I was really passionate about it. But more recently, when I come to it, I'm non-partisan now. I'm not with any political party at all. I just watch from the sidelines and commentate as you do, and you do very well as well, very articulate. But so I've decided to stay out of the kind of inner circle of politics, if you like, and just use my voice. And if it's of any use to anyone, if they want to hear it, here I am.